Good afternoon. We got to deal with rejection. We've all had some level of rejection in our life. And I always wondered what the difference between those who experience rejection and keep going and those who don't keep going once they experience rejection, what that difference is. And what I've come up with is that we are, we become what we think about all the time. If you're ruminating on the rejection, you're replaying that over and over again in your mind, then chances are it's going to consume you. And so, an example in the Bible that I think of, rejection, we got to deal with it because it becomes bitterness, and bitterness, the Bible says, is like a poisonous root, and roots grow deep, and they impact the whole tree or the plant. So if the roots are bad, the roots are bad, then the tree or the plant's going to be bad. And so I really want to deal with this rejection thing because a lot of times when you see people struggling with mental health, particularly when I say mental health, I'm speaking of like environmental type things like depression, um, sometimes anxiety. They've been rejected before, and they've allowed that rejection to replay in their mind. And so that rejection opens up doors to other things that really take us down that path of destruction, like drugs and alcohol, or um, other compulsive, obsessive type behaviors. And sometimes it just hinders us from moving forward. It stifles us because fear takes a hold. And so we have to deal with rejection because it turns into fear and bitterness. And like I said, fear, God said He hasn't given us that spirit. So we know that the spirit of fear is of the enemy. And then bitterness is like poison in our body. And so there's a story in the Bible about Paul, or King Saul, I'm sorry, and David. And you remember the women were chanting, Saul killed his 1,000, David killed his 10,000. And they were doing all that chanting. And what happened with Saul is that he took that, what the women were saying, as a rejection on his part. And so he allowed bitterness and jealousy to spring up because he kept thinking about what the people were saying. Now that's important in itself because in the day of social media, you see all kinds of people doing things that you do, and they may do it better or not. Doesn't really matter. Our focus shouldn't be on what other people are saying. It should be on what God has said. And just because someone does something better than you or is doing what you're doing does not mean you're inadequate. And I think that sometimes we look at that as us being inadequate in an area because someone else is doing it better. So King Saul, began to have this spirit of rejection. It was rejection, fear, insecurities, all because of what other people were saying. And it allowed this poisonous root of bitterness to spring up in his life. And we all know his story. He ended up being removed from his office. The Lord allowed him to continue serving for some years, but his kingdom, his people being on the throne, all of that was stripped away because of his actions. We know that he was given a tormenting spirit, and he plotted to kill David several times. So he had a murderous spirit. He just dealt with a lot of stuff, and it all stemmed from that moment where he allowed rejection to creep in And he kept rehearsing that rejection over and over again. It opened up doors for so many other areas to be impacted in his life. And so we got to get a hold of the rejection. When you feel rejected, just know that everyone in life has experienced rejection. It has absolutely nothing to say about you and your abilities. It could be that God is closing a door. It could be that there was someone better, and that's okay. Someone better for the position, or someone better for that relationship. Whatever it is, we got to learn how to not take things so personal. And we got to look at it in a different manner. Just think about if King Saul would have took what those women were saying differently. Instead of looking at his insecurities, got this dog, he stopped walking, y'all. Looking at his insecurities and just chalked it up to, yeah, David is a great man and he's killed his 10,000, and it's okay. I did my part. Just think how he would have responded differently to all of that. How he would have, his mental state would have been better, because now he's not focusing on his lack, but he's recognizing that he did his part and David did his part, and left it at that. I hope this is making sense to you. Y'all, rejection is dangerous, and we have to recognize it. So, and address it. How we do that is reframing, not looking at the situation as a lack on our part, but considering the positive and not discounting the positive. Hope that helps. God bless. Until next time. Say bye, Zoom.